Stewart Lee isn't like most comedians. He's pretentious, deluded, condescending, and narcissistic. He has a voice better suited to meditational relaxation tapes and the aura of a man about to give a particularly aggressive lecture. In this video, I want to target one thing that captures Lee's approach to stand-up, and that's the way he treats the audience. Stewart Lee doesn't like the audience. In fact, he kind of despises them. They're continually getting in his way, undermining him, and ultimately not appreciating his genius. In this way, Lee throws one of the guiding principles of stand-up hilariously and mercilessly into the air, and it's fascinating to watch Lee blame and belittle the audience, all while quietly manipulating them to his will.
Thank you very much, thank you.
Lee has been influenced by many comedians over his career, amongst them Simon Munnery, Jerry Sadowitz, Kevin McAleer, Johnny Vegas, and his double-act partner, Richard Herring. Yet the comedian who made Lee want to become a comedian, and who can tell us the most about Lee's approach to comedy, was and is uninterested alternative comic Ted Chippington, who Lee saw supporting The Fall in 1984.
Ted came out, stood absolutely motionless, and told the same joke more or less over and over and over again in a monotonous voice, provoking a hostile and tense reaction from the audience. It was, and remains to this day, the coolest thing I've ever seen.
As Lee notes, people were either paralysed with laughter or furious with irritation. I was utterly transfixed and my heart was racing as I realised that stand-up could be anything you wanted it to be. You didn't even have to look like you were enjoying it.
I didn't think I could ever be a performer because I thought you had to be confident and move around and look like you were enjoying yourself, and I wasn't that sort of person. And then when I saw Ted, I realised you didn't have to be any of those things. You didn't even have to have any stuff.
What's interesting about Chippington is he had seemingly no desire to be on stage. He wasn't trying to appear likeable or even engaging.
He said, how far the railway station's away from here, mate? I said, 1 mile. He said, 1 mile? I said, 1 mile, roughly speaking. Couldn't be too sure, you know. You didn't find that funny then? Well, I do. Thank you.
Or, as Chippington puts it...
No, there wasn't. I don't know, really. I was just someone doing something, you know, for no particular reason, I suppose. It's really great.
You can see this foundation in pretty much everything Lee does. Lee has no interest in winning the audience over. In fact, the character Lee portrays believes it's the audience's privilege to be in his company. This seems like a pretty terrible recipe for winning the audience over, but it does work, albeit counterintuitively.
But actually what I've managed to do is create a sort of character on stage who feels he is better than the public, and therefore if they don't appear to be liking it, that makes him even happier and more emboldened. And once the people realise that their approval is irrelevant, they often relax and start to give it you.
What Lee has done is he's taken the indifference of Chippington's act and stirred in a kind of smug superiority. And by portraying himself as a smug, stuck-up, politically correct, holier-than-thou lefty, he gives himself a lot of room to play. As Lee assumes he's better than the audience, he also doesn't have to pander to their expectations. In fact, much of his comedy comes from how blatantly he puts himself in opposition, emphasising how little they have in common.
You know, I haven't noticed anything about your lives. They're not of interest to me.
And ridiculing mainstream comedians for their empty, high-energy approach.
Observational comedy.
In Content Provider, where Lee is undeniably at his most unhinged and mentally unstable, he either insults the audience outright...
And that's why I'm up here like a god, right? And you're down there in the dark like pigs in an Essex ditch.
or says he'd prefer it if all the seats were sold but nobody arrived.
That's my dream, an entirely sold-out empty room. which would eliminate the main problem with all my work, which is the public's ongoing inability to recognise its genius. It's
A quote that follows Norm Macdonald around is he's the smartest person in the room pretending to be the dumbest. The implication being that the comedian who places themselves in a lower position of power will have an easier time getting the audience to laugh. What Lee does is gleefully flip this convention on its head. Stewart Lee declares he's the smartest person in the room, but takes it to such a maniacal extreme that the audience is left to laugh at his deluded sense of self-importance.
the sort of persona of the character, which is a kind of exaggerated version of me. He thinks he's right anyway, and he thinks what he's doing is good, and he thinks that there's some kind of problem with an audience for not understanding him. So weirdly, if I am going down badly now to nothing, which can still happen, I can sort of stay in character as this stand-up that would think it was the audience's fault. I kind of never go down badly now in my own head. Even if I do go down badly, as long as I do what Stewart Lee the comedian would do, which is to blame the audience and think that they're not ready to receive how brilliant he is, then it makes me laugh on the inside. So as long as I'm true to the character, I sort of feel it hasn't failed.
It's pretty hilarious to think that Lee's ego is so inflated that he would sooner blame the audience for the failure of a joke than he would himself, and you can see Lee mine this trait for maximum comic effect. Often, it's not the joke that gets the laugh, which Lee will purposefully set up to fail.
The Pirates Adventure Car Selectivity Centre, my foot.
But instead the long, patronising explanation of how the audience are misunderstanding his genius.
Okay, the Pirates Adventure Car Selectivity Centre, my foot. Yeah? Now, my foot, that's a dismissive figure of speech, isn't it? Oh, my foot, we've all used that, yeah? Okay, well, why it's funny here is because...
Perhaps the craftiest way Lee blames the audience is how he divides them up. In every special since Stand-Up Comedian, Lee will split the room into sections, usually a small group of die-hard fans up the front, although even they aren't above Lee's reproach.
Yeah, kind of people like me, innit? Wankers.
And a weaker section at the back who don't understand what he's doing.
Everybody over here, for the rest of the night, you're on board. You're going to be Team A, okay? And you won't mind if I don't play over here too much. I'm going to be mainly concentrating on Team F in that corner. Don't cheer that you are better than that, right? Team A, for some of you, it's just a luck of random seating, isn't it, right?
As Lee notes, by dividing the audience into those who get it and those who don't, eventually, usually, the don't-gets wanted to be part of the do-gets, and gradually a strong enough coalition of the willing was formed. But you'll notice how this too is a diversionary tactic. By getting the audience to play off against each other, Lee removes himself from the equation. The problem is not Lee's ability to deliver a joke, but rather a lethargic audience who simply need to try a little harder.
If you're sitting next to an F and they laugh at a clever bit, right, you can just reach over and give their hand a little squeeze and we will bring you along. I will not leave anyone behind, I swear.
Taken to its extreme, Lee will deliver a joke, then infer from the different responses how the room is completely unworkable. Lee makes himself out to be a tragic figure, doomed to perform to an audience that can't act as one. The only thing he fails to mention is that he was the one who divided them in the first place.
Do you see how impossible it is to work this room? Because you can't, because down here I don't even need to finish that joke off. They've thought, oh yeah, samples of jokes, that'll be the same as samples of cardboard, samples of what jokes could be like. But up there, you're just going, oh, why is he talking about cardboard? It's actually not doable. It's because down here, this is like a vision of this is what it could be like. You know?
What begins to come clear is Lee is not so much interested in playing to the audience as he is in manipulating them to his will, like some vindictive conductor seeking revenge upon the very audience who paid to see him. There's a wonderful passage in his book where Lee is describing a joke about watching the funeral of Pope John Paul II or the wedding of Prince Charles and Camilla Parker Bowles.
Although it's hard, isn't it, to imagine which one of those two events would have been the most depressing to watch, you know? The public veneration of a wrinkled old corpse. Well done.
The joke relies on the audience understanding how this kind of joke is usually structured, the idea being that the audience predicts the punchline before Lee delivers it. Amusingly, however, Lee notes, sometimes if the audience hadn't anticipated the correct ending to the joke, I would deliberately spoil it by saying, the public veneration of a wrinkled old corpse, or the wedding of Prince Charles and Camilla Parker Bowles. Lee even admits, I don't know why I would do this, it seems extremely self-indulgent and futile.
Let's hope the viewers at home are operating with the same lightning reflexes.
I love the implication that Lee would rather sabotage his joke and get no laugh instead of following through with a joke he felt was beneath him, and it's a pretty telling statement of Lee's career. Any sign of traditional jokes have more or less disappeared, in favour of, as Lee puts it, grinding repetition, embarrassing silences, and passive-aggressive monotony. Anyone who's seen Lee's rap singers joke will know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, you've seen them about, the rap singers. Yeah, you've seen the rap singers on the top of the pops, they have them, don't they? They used to come on there, didn't they, the rappers, the rap singers come on the top of the pops. You've seen them on there, there'd be...
This is not to say Lee cannot write jokes, but more that he'll use what look like jokes to engage the audience in an ongoing game of trickery and deception. Often Lee will feed the audience a traditional joke or gag, then laugh at them for laughing at the very joke he just served them.
She'd be the first to admit there wasn't really any pressing need. But what you will find, if you... You like that, do you? Like that Charlie Chaplin shit?
Or deliberately run the audience down a blind alley before turning on them at the last second.
Yeah, you like that, the switcheroo? He sounded German, turned out he was Spanish. Not impossible, is it? Could have been born in Spain, trained in Germany, come over here to work. Maybe it's not such a funny situation after all. You have to watch out, some of the jokes are traps. They're not meant to be laughed at. You walked into it.
Lee takes the audience's knowledge of how stand-up is supposed to work and uses it to cruelly subvert their expectations. As an audience member, you're not even sure whether you should laugh, for fear that Lee will turn your own laughter against you.
So I'd gone away and I'd gathered the final four there through the... You like that, do you? That's great. Do you know what? I probably won't be able to give you the show you want.
Lee even has a technique he refers to as killing the punchline, where he will make it obvious what the punchline of a joke is going to be in a bid to get the audience to focus on his use of rhythm and language. Although even then he still finds a way to blame these extended routines on the audience's lack of focus.
You know what? Every time you look at your watch, I start again.
If we wanted to get technical about it, what Lee takes part in is a theatrical technique known as Brechtian alienation.
I want you to laugh in spite of me, not because of me. It's an example of the theatrical practice known as Brechtian alienation. It is. It's an incredibly high-risk performance strategy that very few people seem to appreciate.
Otherwise known as the distancing effect, Brechtian alienation is where a performer will seek to disrupt what's happening on stage by pointing out the artificiality of their own performance. It's basically about making the audience hyper-aware that what's happening on stage isn't real, that things are not occurring in the moment, in a bid to create a distance between the audience and the performer. As Brecht states, the artist's objective is to appear strange and even surprising to the audience. He achieves this by looking strangely at himself and his work. In film or theatre, Brechtian alienation is often shown through bare or minimal sets, obvious and telegraphed lighting changes, characters breaking the fourth wall or addressing the camera directly, and the plot being spoiled in advance of it happening. If this isn't ringing bells with Stewart Lee, you probably haven't watched him enough.
It's about 5 minutes from the end. It's about 10 o'clock. I will repeat the phrase "carpet remnant world" over some music, and that will give the illusion of structure.
Lee's whole performance strategy is pretty much a high-wire act of Brechtian proportions. He is constantly poking holes both in his stage persona and the artifice of his performance. He'll come on stage with his hand dense with notes, immediately robbing his performance of any spontaneity.
Russell Brand and Dan Brown, celebrity hardbacks. And if you're near the front now, you can see I'm just doing hand there, hand. Talk about what's on my hand.
He'll use props or pieces of paper, noting how bringing a deliberate piece of artifice into a performance that strives to give the illusion of spontaneity is what makes it funny. Sometimes he'll take this a step further, reading out something the audience assumes to be true before later revealing that what he had read out was blatantly false.
Interesting thing about those 4 quotes. The second interesting thing about those 4 quotes, I think, is that of those 4 quotes, only 2 of them were made up by me.
In If You Prefer a Milder Comedian, Lee even walks on stage to rock music and a smokescreen, a la Live at the Apollo, only for the smoke to go everywhere and Lee having to restart the show twice over.
Now the smoke's all gone and I haven't got... I'll go off and then I'll just come out and I'll just go into straight talk. I'll just come on and I'll immediately talk about forget this. And anyway, he was supposed to film that anyway, and he was right up there, so that won't even register nothing there. It's a fucking waste of time.
In other words, Lee wants the audience to see the mechanics of his performance, and he points this out with such barefaced conviction that he wants the audience to laugh in the face of it anyway. For the willing audience, the question is not whether they're going to be manipulated, but how. And just how far Lee is willing to go.
Say it to you tonight, and then I've learned this as well that I'm saying now and written that, and this now. I've written that and learned that, and this, just going like that, going that. I've learned that. I've written that, and this now. I've learned this, and this now, and this, and just going. I've written that. I've learned that. Everything's written and learned.
This is saying nothing, and talk about treating your audience with no respect, of how half the time Lee isn't even talking to the audience directly, but instead is saying how he's manipulating them down the barrel of a camera.
You talk to a camera directly, and it's much lower down than you are.
Well, I think that what the director's helped me to do there, by me literally talking down to the camera, is he's visually represented the air of condescension that comes off everything that I say.
Lee uses cameras to further alienate the audience from what's happening on stage. He'll turn away from the audience, often in the middle of a joke, to address the audience at home, or provide a post-mortem on the joke he's just uttered.
4 series now I've been doing this, right? I've obviously chosen to do it like this. I'm not mentally ill. And another thing. You're all right, mate. You're all right.
The audience is not even worthy of Lee's full attention, and the laughs come from how casually they're thrown aside, left to watch from the wings as Lee discusses the joke he's just delivered, as if they weren't even there.
Okay, they're laughing at that. Do you think that's all right, that joke? I don't know. Because it's get laughs, but it sort of breaks the truth of the story, doesn't it? Do you know what I mean?
Even the interview sections in Comedy Vehicle and Content Provider add another layer of Brechtian alienation. Here, Lee's performance is broken down and analysed by a series of increasingly stern interviewers, and keeps the viewer hyper-aware of the contrivances within Lee's performance.
So for the first episode particularly, I've made a special effort to try and put in as many jokes as I can.
Oh, right, so how many is that?
4. I think there's 4, it might be 3, but there's 4, which is 4 more than in the first series.
A perfect example comes in Content Provider, where Lee is talking to an audience member in a supposed piece of improv.
£5. Have you seen this before? Have you tried to fuck this up on purpose? For God's sake, tonight of all the... It's not £5, no. You panicked, didn't you? It's £5. It's £3.67. Now...
However, directly preceding this, Lee states,
Each night is exactly the same. All the things happen, they happen the same every night. No place is any different to the other, and the show goes beat for beat the same every night.
He even acknowledges how he's manufactured the improvisation to fail, nodding to us through the back camera in the middle of the routine.
So, this is... I'll be really amazed if this makes the edit. But if it does, then that's a camera to get it on there. So...
I don't think you could ask for a better description of Lee's approach to stand-up than to say that sometimes the audience isn't even in on the joke. And for some, Lee's blatant violation of their expectations is understandably a step too far. In fact, Lee often seems to be baiting the audience on purpose. He'll go on these long, personal stories filled with specific characters and details, only to reveal that the story was completely made up.
Now... that story about Richard Hammond is not true.
Or contort entire routines around the failure of a joke that he had orchestrated to fail in the first place.
I mean, audiences like you know, you as good as murdered Robin Williams.
Or lay the bones of his performance so bare that there is nothing left to hang to.
Pretentious, metatextual, self-aware shit. What's wrong with proper jokes? That's what I say to me.
And even then, he'll still gleefully disparage those who simply can't stomach anymore.
Like going out there, everyone has a cut-off point. I didn't pay to hear a 20-minute fictional story about Richard Hammond. Set in a library.
Perhaps the biggest thing to take away, and it's true of Brechtian alienation in general, is that Lee doesn't want the audience to sit back and relax, or arguably even enjoy the performance. Instead, he wants them engaged, analysing and dissecting his performance to see the deeper meaning within it. As Lamos Ignoramus describes, the unrealism of the story distances the audience from it, and they can now examine it from a critical point of view rather than simply relate to it on an emotional level. Or as Lee says, I am arrogant, but I have chosen to be arrogant for comic effect, and hope that this creates a distancing effect between me and the audience. I hope they admire the comedy, but I'd rather they didn't enjoy the show just because they think they liked me as a person. It seems cheap.
And I hope audiences don't really like me as a person and are not interested in who I am.
The real joy in watching Lee is accepting that you're a victim in his game. He wants you to walk into an arena where you're always 3 steps behind and even the truth is up for grabs. It's the comedy equivalent of a psychotic cat letting a mouse wriggle beneath its paw, or setting a hamster up in a wheel just to watch how far it can run. And who doesn't want to be a hamster? now and again.
What you've done is evolve a system that knowingly operates the levers that make people laugh by using any means possible apart from actually saying anything funny.
Yeah, I know.
You make them feel awkward,
Yeah.
you make them feel a little bit afraid,
Yeah.
you make them feel nervous,
Yeah.
and that is the only reason they laugh.
But what's the last thing that they would expect? Something funny actually just being said. And that's what I've tried to do in this series.
Again and again.
Again and again, I've tried to just do a joke that will make people laugh. And you can see the fear and confusion on their faces. They go, what's this? What's happening now?
This is quite a complicated brew because I'm not sure whether that's smug or psychotic.
Yeah.